good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Six Rings Kane Show on a new night, Monday night now, baby. We're really excited, actually, to have Eric McLean on the show here, college football analyst, co-host of The Huddle. Coach, yes! All right!
First touchdown of the year.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a six-ring Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ, break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. We reporting live from the Hall Ride Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the six-ring champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards of Hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
What's up, everyone? And I guess to answer the question, DJ, what's wrong with us tonight is we're two people short.
I know there is no legendary Larry Bluestein at the moment or Jazz Santana. So, yeah.
You're going to settle for us tonight. Yeah, DJ. And, they picked an exciting week to skip here.
I know they did. And, you wonder if there's any more fireworks coming down the bend here. But Miami certainly had its fair share of victories this week. And it just goes to show the ups and downs of recruiting. This week was definitely on the upswing.
Right, and I think on the diamond as well, it was a big week. So we'll get to that in a second. Let's do some prize picks. Get that done here for our sponsor. Actually, the sponsor of the entire network, 5 Reasons Sports, is Prize Picks. So if you go to prizepicks.com, enter the offer code 5. That is FIVE, the word 5 spelled out. You can play up to 2 to 6 players. The more players you play, the more money you'll win. And if you go to prizepicks.com and enter the offer code FIVE, that is the number 5 spelled out, just like the name of our network, our website, all that stuff. FIVE, Prize Picks and 5 Reasons Sports will match your first deposit up to $100. That's prizepicks.com, offer code 5. That's FIVE. All right, so let's get we got a healthy crew here in the chat. So shout out to Jeff. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Artavius Jones and JoJo Trado for sure. And then there's quite a few questions about baseball. Unfortunately, without Yasmani here, use his full name. See if he ever hears that. We're gonna park a little bit of the baseball conversation until the next show, or we might do a one-off baseball show. I will say though, yes, actually, you know what, DJ, the Hurricanes hired is coming from your neck of the woods here in Boston. So just for everyone's awareness, Darren Fester was hired as he's the third base coach. The one of the assistant coaches going to be in charge of hitting. So he has an extensive career. Spent the last decade plus with the Red Sox. Obviously, Alex Cora is there, which is probably where the connection came from. So now in college baseball, you get 3 assistant coaches, which is new this year. It used to be 2, and then the head coach. In Major League Baseball, you get unlimited assistant coaches, and they tend to deploy them. So I don't even know if you've ever heard of this guy, DJ, or if you have a take on him at all.
I do know he was the interim third base coach. I didn't really do my studying on Red Sox third base coaches while he was here, but I will say that Alex Cora has a very strong baseball mind, and his assistants also carry, strong work ethics and baseball minds as well. So I believe that this is a strong hire for Miami, to say the least. And you kind of mentioned it just a couple minutes ago. He has a lot of baseball experience. I believe he worked for Team USA as well at one point.
He did. Yeah. And he's going to be the hitting coach, and as well as infielders and catchers.
So so he has a varied background from several different levels and several different situations. And, I think, anybody with major league experience and varied experience, whether it be international baseball or, Major League Baseball or whatever, just someone who has, varied experiences with the game of baseball is a strong hire, because I fully believe whether it be baseball, football, or whatever sport, varied experiences in different situations, can really benefit a coach and a player.
Yeah, and again, he's got a ton of experience as Kane's Cats Heat 305 hitting the full gamut there, which I think I made that joke before, so I'm on repeats. But yeah, this at the college level, this is a great hire. A couple of other things around baseball before we pivot. Couple of recruits in the transfer portal that we landed. One is Slade Natterman. He pitched at Kennesaw State a couple of years ago. Went JUCO. He's been playing in summer ball as well. Hits mid 90s in terms of his velocity. So the Canes obviously need pitchers, and that's a get there. His ERA isn't great, but he does appear to have good stuff. And then the name that might be a little bit more familiar to Canes fans is Luke Costello. He is transferring from our friends up north, Wake Forest, who was the number one team in the country for
very strong baseball program
much of last year. Yeah. And he's a local kid from Westminster. And then kind of the last thing, I'm just run down some baseball news before we pivot to, I know the Pigskins on everyone's mind. The Canes also hired their final assistant coach, because if you recall, Laz Gutierrez announced several weeks ago, is Jonathan Anderson. He will be coaching outfielders. So I know Kane's Cat Heat wanted a Fester in the outfield, but it's going to be Jonathan Anderson, and he will also be the first base coach. Fester, as you can imagine, is going to be the third base coach, and so it's a bit of a change because Gino DeMari has been the third base coach, obviously retired. So JD, with his pitching coach background, is not going to be on the field when the team is hitting. It'll be Anderson at first and Fenster at third. That is a very brief baseball rundown. We are going to pivot to the football and the big news from the last week. DJ Josiah Trader, better known as JoJo, commits to Miami. I know, the Canes were kind of in the lead for him. Then it looked like maybe not, and then that's a big get. Well, what are the Canes getting with who I think undoubtedly is one of the best receivers in the country?
The Canes are getting a very sharp route runner who has very solid movements in terms of, twitches and, elusiveness. He's not herky-jerky, and I think, that certainly plays a part of it as well. He's a deep field, big play threat. He comes out of Chaminade, and he caught 47 passes for 473 yards and, 7 touchdowns in 13 games last year. And he was ranked number 10 in the Max Preps top 25 player rankings last season. I mean, you look at the offer list that he had, Alabama, Colorado, Florida, even Coastal Carolina. I mean, it seemed like everybody wanted him. He had several offers on the table, and for Miami to get, a player of Trader's caliber, it was certainly, no matter if Miami was in the lead or whatever, nothing's a guarantee in recruiting, and landing Trader was a big get. And, this was also another big get for Kevin Beard. He's had a very strong couple of months on the recruiting trail, landing Trader, Chance Robinson, and Shamar Kirk. So Beard has also had a good, couple weeks in recruiting, and Trader is just, the icing on top of the cake so far.
Yeah, and obviously big time get, and our own 5-star recruit has showed up. Apparently was on a meeting and just dropped in. So
he's always working.
We'll of course let in the legendary Larry Bluestein here. Blue, how's it going, man?
Good.
Hey,
sorry, guys. I just I thought I'd be done with that early enough, but I wasn't.
No problem. So you came just in time. We did a little baseball up front, and we pivoted now to football, and we were just getting DJ's take on JoJo Trader. So floor is yours to opine about the Canes' new wide receiver.
Yeah, big time kid. A great, the great thing is all these guys started at Monsignor pace. all that freshman year, him and Jeremiah Smith and Posse, they were all Vince Shavers. They were all part of that freshman team over at Monsignor Pace. And then when Trader went the following year, his sophomore year, to Miami Central, he played a really, really good role, real good player, but he really made his name in the state championship game where he played one play on defense and he picked it and went 94 yards. So it kind of like, this is Miami's signature recruit. This is the Mawagoa of last year. I mean, for this year, because as far as status is concerned, and Miami's had a really good week, a couple of good weeks, and bringing somebody like him aboard with, some of the other guys that they've gotten over the last couple of weeks. It's just, people keep asking me, and this is the one question I get, and what do you expect this year? And I'll tell you guys, I don't know. I really don't know. You have 34 new faces on that team. It's a completely different roster than it was last year. You still have some of the cast members, but we go over this every week, especially the depth factor and on the offensive line, where last year we kind of hurt a little bit, and especially look at running back. There's no way that they're going to a walk-on this year to play. They just have a lot of depth there, and they have to be the perfect storm for everyone to get hurt, which we hope doesn't happen. And then probably one of the bigger changes, on the team is probably going to be at the receiver position, where you have, quite a few guys now that will all, vie for playing time. And we know defensively they're a whole lot better in the front seven than they were last year, a whole lot deeper. And the best thing is hopefully this year will go, I'm not going to be unrealistic, but hopefully this year will produce 8 wins and get to a bowl game and be in a situation where when all these studs come in next year, you'll start what we talked about. You got to have 3 full recruiting classes that are top 15, top 10 to really make a dent from a national standpoint. And then what probably enhances, and I know DJ, that this portal's made all the difference in the world, and not just for Miami, but for everybody. And it's really infused Miami to the point where, you pick up 2 big time leaders on the offensive line, and Lee and Javion Cohen, and your whole outlook changes. And that's why I'm saying, because now Tyler Van Dyke won't be hurried every single play. I'm sure they'll still blitz and they'll do things, but I'm talking about for the most part. Then he's got people to give the ball to and to throw to. So I just think that, I think people forget that this kid had just a mammoth year 2 years ago. So much so that everyone's talking about him as one of the top draft picks if he comes out. So yeah, I think by adding a guy like Josiah Trader and, some of the kids that Washington and, Chance Robinson and guys like that, your whole, even the young man we had on last week, offensive lineman, which Miami definitely needs to add depth to that position. And I just think that getting a Trader shows all bets are off. Anybody, if a marquee kid like that is going to come, then I think that we're not finished bringing in that type of player.
DJ, you have anything else to add here on JoJo?
I agree. I mean, I think he's the type of, player that you can build a wide receiver room around. Obviously, we got to, wait till things happen out on the field, but landing a guy like JoJo Trader certainly sets a tone in terms of recruiting as well. Where even though we struggled last season, we're still recruiting at a high level. We're committed to building the program, and we're committed to building a solid foundation. And Trader is one of the pieces that can help you establish that foundation. Last year, we were kind of working, with, I don't want to say bad players by any means, but we were thin. And now we're starting to build the foundational pieces needed for, like Blue said, that sustains success.
Yeah. I mean, you're coming off those 2 years where, you had guys, especially at the receiver position, and Rambo a couple of years ago that could, when you look back, that kind of made the team. I mean,
Yep.
90 catches, and a guy, knew how to get into the end zone. And then, yeah, I mean, it helps when you have guys that come into the huddle and you say to yourself, hey, you know what, we could break this thing open right now, and then, not to take anything away from Restrepo or anybody like that, you just need a home run hitter, and somebody like not for this year, but for next year, Josiah Trader's that type of guy. He's one of those marquee kids that'll be here for a couple of years, and then he'll go to the NFL.
So, GJ, I will amend one of the things you said. Some of these kids on the team last year, they weren't, I guess, bad is probably a strong word, but they certainly shouldn't have been at Miami, and that's why. I mean, if you look at where almost all of them transferred, those are schools that you consider like a level below, the ACC and Power 5 conference football. So it kind of tells you where that talent was sitting. We always like to say, "Oh, they're Miami. There's always talent." Well, not if they're all transferring to schools that are down a level.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So I think there was definitely a talent. There's definitely a coaching issue as well, which is why a lot of the coaches are gone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But there was also a talent gap. So that's Blue said, 30 plus new players coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rolling the dice big time. I don't know. Let's hope it comes up well. So that was one of two big recruits the Canes landed this week. Now I know the other one's less name recognition, but as Kubice says, trenches are a focus, and the Canes got a building block at a position in need. Artavius Jones. Blue, I don't know if you have any. Start with you on this. If you have any thoughts on Artavius.
Well, this is it. Like I said, it pays off to go around this state during the off season, and here's a kid that I had the opportunity, just like last year with the quarterback that we brought in, to have had the opportunity to watch him as a ninth grader. And this will be the first player that Miami's ever gotten from Bluntstown. Bluntstown is up in the Panhandle, and if you miss the exit, you miss the town. So pretty small, but here's a kid who was a big time kid. And back Coach Johnson, who was our coach back in his ninth grade year, they went to state his sophomore year. And they played against Hawthorne, which is a pretty good team. But back then, I remember the coach saying to me, listen, there's a kid you really got to keep an eye on. He said, this is, because Bluntstown they've had some kids. They just had a kid last year going to FSU. So they've had guys, but it's not, a factory. And he said to me, he says, this could be one of the best kids we've ever had. He's big, he's strong, he's a worker, he gets it done in the classroom, and he's a great kid. He says, I go to church, where he goes to church, and I will see him every Sunday. And so I kind of rung in my ear a little bit. And then when he committed, I called that coach who's up at Coffee County in Georgia. And I said, Coach, I got to give you credit. I really do. And he said to me, he goes, not a lot of people will, say that. I said, but I don't forget. So I think what we got in this young man is somebody who's going to, he's possibly, you look at him and say, this is a potential play on Sunday type kid. He's big, he's strong, he's athletic. And I was very fortunate to watch him at the beginning of his career, and then last year when, because they had a couple of guys last year. So, yeah, this is a big get. It's a really big get. And I don't think the fan base really understands, because they really never heard much about him and obviously hadn't seen him play. But this ranks up there with the kids that they've gotten. This kid's a very skilled guy, and he's going to, and the best thing about it is, I know that Florida was on him, a few other schools, because you figured that he would fit in a smaller environment. Well, Miami is a smaller environment. You go to Gables and you hang out and just, it's not Bluntstown. They have more than 2 Burger Kings, but But on the other hand, I think it's a place where he's going to feel comfortable. He already loves, the coaches that he met and the environment, and it's a lot like the kid Judd Anderson is. I mean, he's going to be a rah guy for the class, and thank goodness, because you know what, I talked to a friend who lives in Seattle, and he said, wasn't Miami 5-7 last year? I said, yeah, they were, but this shows you what changes in coaching staff, having one of the best recruiters in the nation as your head coach. I personally don't think that Mario took a vacation. I really don't. I mean, everybody else went away. Mirabal went to Italy because everywhere he went, he was shooting the U up, in front of the Leaning Tower of Pisa or something. But I personally don't think Mario went anywhere. I think that's how important this turnaround is to him. He's going to sacrifice everything he can just to get you back to being the you. And so that's my answer to that guy that asked me that. I said, listen, you've got somebody who came back to his alma mater for a reason. He had a blank check at Oregon. I mean, he could have been taken care of for 8 lifetimes. But because he feels that he understands what it takes, and remember, he was part of that culture when they were winning. So, yeah, I really feel so optimistic this year. Not enough to go out like Vish and predict 11 wins, but I still feel good enough that every week when they show up, they're going to have more than a puncher's chance, because they've got athletes, they got really good coaching. And, when you take a look at Jason Taylor and what he's really meant to this team, I mean, he went to Chicago and got a kid 2 weeks ago that I think, may be another gem of the class. I watched the guy on tape. I know people who've watched him. They thought he was like a Big Ten kid for sure. But then Jason Taylor shows up and kind of like he did in high school with Dallas Turner, who was arguably one of the best defensive ends in the country at Alabama, and just made so many changes. And I think that's what he's here to do, to coach and to make changes in kids. And Mario's giving him carte blanche, I mean, whatever you want, man, whatever you do your best, and let the coaches coach. I don't think the coaches wanted to coach last year, but this year, that's not, as you said, DJ, you look at Kevin Beard and wow, what a difference, I mean, and Timmy Harris, what a difference. I'm not going to take any shots at Hickson because I see him a lot over at FIU. But a lot of people are talking that, you look at DeMarcus Van Dyke and he could be responsible for a lot of these kids that may come Miami's way. And I think that maybe down the line, because the guy's going to go somewhere else, whether it's going to be the NFL or because he's that type of coach. And I think that Miami looks directly back at Van Dyke because knows the game, played in the NFL, but he knows recruiting. And he's got that intangible that he can go into somebody's living room and be very convincing. And that's the one thing I think, guys, that it's been missing with Miami, marquee recruiters. Manny wasn't a marquee recruiter. A lot of his staff weren't of that nature. But right now, you've got the best of the best, and like I said, I just think that it's going to add up to some really, really exciting football.
Well,
I didn't mean to put you to sleep, but
no, go ahead.
DJ, get in there.
Well, with Jones, what struck out to me was his athleticism. He played, offensive line and defensive line, and I believe he also played a little bit of tight end and fullback last season.
Yeah.
And it's more than just recruiting an offensive lineman and defensive lineman nowadays. It's recruiting athletes, like Blue said, on both sides of the football. You need to have guys that can run well and move well. You need to have linemen that can make that crucial block on a screen pass, for example, and And linemen especially need to be more than just a guy who can stand up and pass block and stand still. You need to have versatility on the line as well. So, I think Jones is another example of a versatile athlete, and he's a guy that can move quick, much like some of the other names in the class. Lightfoot comes to mind, for example. And I think it's the type of player that Miami needs in order to keep up with the offensive type of game that college football presents itself.
Yeah, well, Lightfoot better be quick with a name like that.
That is true.
So I do have a question for two of you playing devil's advocate. Our fans are forever skeptical, and I guess been proven right the last 25 years.
That's
or
fair.
20 years, but so I'll be honest, Blue. You mentioned he's the first kid we've ever gotten out of Bluntstown. I didn't know where that was when he committed, and I looked it up. So it's a stone's throw from Tallahassee.
Yeah.
It's not that far from Gainesville. And if you look at his offer list, those schools apparently didn't offer him. So now we always kind of dismiss star ratings depending on where you look. He's at 3 or 4 stars. So does anyone have an opinion on why, Florida State aren't on a kid who has the measurables, even in the recruiting, again, 3/4 is right in line with what Miami, Florida State generally go after, especially on offensive line.
No.
Can you give what do you think's up with his offer list?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, you look at when Emory Williams was at that camp at FSU, they didn't even know who he was. They had never even heard about him. And Milton is New York City compared to Bluntstown, so it happens. I just don't think that I think they watched him play and they probably figured his competition was, but his competition was, who they played, and he dominated. And you saw DJ from the videos and the film, he dominated. And that's why I say, when people say to me, oh, well, he didn't play a great competition, I said, but when he played anybody, he dominated. So what's the difference?
Yep.
He did what he was supposed to. It wasn't like he was getting by. But yeah, it's a stone's throw from Tallahassee, but it could be 8,000 miles because it's out in the middle of nowhere. They hurt really bad when they got that hurricane a couple of years ago because that came right up through them. And they play teams like Port St. Joe, and they play teams like Liberty County and smaller schools, but they also have reached the state finals 3 out of the last 7 years. So they play winning football. And but to answer your question, you know what? That's why Miami's Miami, and because they're doing their homework and they're seeing what the potential is, and not just what they're doing right now.
And Blue made an absolutely great point when talking about the competition that he faced. You can't fault a kid for playing well against the teams that are on his schedule, no matter what level of competition. He's still playing hard and trying hard and making an impact. And when you look at it in terms of like that face value, that's the type of guy that you want on your team. And so, it's very easy for people to say, oh, well, player XYZ didn't face good competition. He didn't really have a choice. He was just playing playing who was on the schedule, and he played really well. So, I mean, credit to Jones for, committing to Miami and getting an offer and getting the coach's attention.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, you look at this year and they play, I'm looking at their schedule now, and they play Defuniak Springs Walton, which is right in the Panama City, Rutherford. Panama City is a big place. Mariana's a little bit small. They play Northview, who was a state runner-up last year. Played Liberty County, which is right down the road. So you look at the teams that they play, and in the classification, they play a schedule of teams that have all made it to the state finals over the last 12, 15 years. So, in that division, they're playing extremely well. And plus, they've had kids that went to Florida before. They've had kids that went to Tennessee and Michigan State. So, I mean, it's, and like Coach Johnson said to me, he says, I mean, the kid is he's a man-child, and he even said to me, he says, I'll tell you what, Miami did their homework. And if you have a high school coach that says that, that's a lot of praise.
So, Blue, I did check just to make sure I kept you honest. There is, as you said, there's one Burger King in Blountstown. Not so you said.
Oh, there is? Okay.
You did say where there's not more than one Burger King, and I did check there is one. So you're right
all
on.
right.
Accurate
Blue's
as
on top
always.
of everything.
Accurate
Come
as
on now.
always. I was like, there's no way there's a Burger King in Blountstown because I did Google Maps it. There was like one road going through town.
There's a good barbecue restaurant there. I ate there before. So
wait, I don't know why I'm asking.
No, but I'm just saying that they these places are small, but the good thing about it is, and there's another town too closer to Gainesville that put a couple of kids in the Power 5 a few years ago named Trenton, and that's another program. I mean, if you miss the exit, you miss the town, and that's how it is up there. Mariana, Liberty County, those schools, Weewahitchka, those schools like that, they're small, but as well as I do, from Pensacola down to Key West, it's awfully tough to match what the state of Florida, puts out every year. And Miami did have 2 kids back in the 60s from the area, but not from that school, just so I could iron that out.
Yeah, just make sure. Yeah, someone will come look that up and be like, well, Blue said. Actually, they'll yell it at me too because they have too much respect for you to say anything to you. All right, so next kind of question. Again, we'll do baseball either as a special show or next week when Jazz is back. We'll go deep dive in a lot of stuff happening over there. All right, so a couple of dominoes fell this last week. Who? I'll start with you on this, DJ. Who do you see coming next, or who are you targeting if you're Mario Cristobal?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think there are still many players on the board here.
Let's just look. So I didn't tell DJ I was going to ask him that question. It's hard to pull one. So what position? Let's go position-wise. That might be a little bit. Like, where do you think the Canes still need? The class is obviously not close to done yet. We're just in the summer. But yeah, what position do you think they should be looking at next?
Just for you, I want to say tight end, but in actuality,
I set you up. Jazz is in here, so it's like,
but in actuality,
DJ tight end question. But.
In actuality, I think continuing to build the offensive line depth is important. So while they have enough right now, we saw what Miami, they struggled in recent seasons with a lack of depth on the offensive line. I don't think that's going to be a problem while this coaching staff is here, but I would like to see them get maybe another tackle. Because although they have the pieces in the 2024 class, for example, and even, 2023 class, obviously, I feel as though they still need to continue to get that position, get some more players in, continue to develop, and because a good offensive line can make a world of difference. And one of the guys that, there's a couple linemen on the board, some of the bigger names, Brandon Baker is one. He had Miami in his top list, I believe, but he's still taking some visits. I believe he was going to make a decision in either July or August, but we'll see how that plays out. And like I said, I still think the line is a area that could use some additional depth.
So same question to you, Blue?
Yeah, I like to see him go after another marquee receiver. Because you talk about never having enough depth. I know that everybody thinks that, right now the push is on since they got Trader, maybe to get his teammate. That's going to be awfully tough. That's going to be a Brinks truck that we don't have. But, it's I'll tell you what, though, I think they need another marquee kid at receiver. And, yeah, I agree with DJ. Offensive line you can never have enough with.
Yeah.
Look at last year. Well, we started the season at running back, and we had like 4 guys, and then 2 guys got hurt, and then another guy kind of got hurt now for the season, and then you were down to Parrish, who got dinged up, and then before you know it, you're starting a guy who was a walk-on. And I don't foresee that happening at the running back position this year because, they got dudes. They really do. And I just think you look at the offense, you look at both sides of the line of scrimmage, and they have made such drastic improvement on both sides just by adding 2 seasoned veteran type of kids in Lee and Cohen. I mean, look what you did. I mean, forget about Malagoa or an improved Rivers, but look what you did by bringing in guys that have 40 something starts in the college level. I mean, and how many times you get a guy like Lee that comes in and you get your offensive line coach saying he's like the best, he's like our big time leader. Kids look up to him. Man, damn, the kid's only been here 6 months, but that's what happens. If you remember back when Russell Wilson transferred, from NC State, and all of a sudden, where he went, he was already the team captain. So that happens, if you get the right guy, and these guys respect the hell out of what Lee did this spring, and obviously Cohen stays healthy and he's going to be big time. But what I like about the offensive line is that you have a couple of established people who could lead the way for the younger studs. Right. And they got those big time kids, Okunlolo and also Malagoa, and you have a lot of those other kids that are going to start coming in, the Kinsler kid and players like that. Wow. And that's how you build. And that's why when everybody says at the beginning, during the draft, they said, wow, look at how many players were taken by Georgia. And then the next year, they're just as good. And then the next year, they're just as good. And if you remember back, and I think I brought this up last week, back in the 80s and back in the 90s, if you went to a spring game and you kind of walked behind the bench and looked at the names on the jersey and you said, oh man, I forgot Miami had him. See, that's where Alabama's at. That's where Ohio State's at. That's where Georgia's at. And I think to win, you got to be at that level. And I think Miami's going to get there. 2 more years from now, you're going to take a look at some of these kids, whoever it may be that are coming in now. And you go, oh, geez, I forgot about that guy. I forgot about Moss. I forgot about this kid. So, yeah, I think that's what it takes. And, they getting a trader already, elevated their recruiting class for 24. And they're, they'll start working on 25. But the key is, let's have a good season. Because if you have a good season, that's it. That's the key. You got to have you have to have you understand if you're going to lose games to, to Clemson or FSU, and okay, that's, but you've got to win the games you need to win, and you got to come up with an upset or two and have an 8-win season and go to a bowl and win. Because if you come away with in the 2023 season with 9 wins, who could bitch? Who could bitch? Nobody can. And I think they have the capabilities. And people may, look at that statement with a fisheye or that. Come on, man, they came off of a 6-6 season. They're 5-7. This is a whole new ball game. This is, like I said, I looked at the roster from last year and then looked at it from this year. It's a whole different deal. I mean, it's you don't have a lot of guys who are dead wood, not anymore. And I think that was his objective. And I think I said that I had Gabby Urrutia from, covers the Hurricanes on the show last night. And that was the one thing I said, Gabby, you came into the press conferences with us and you saw the face on Mario, and it was painful because, even though he kind of knew that this was probably the way it was going to be, when the reality sets in, it's a little tougher. And I think that's why he burns the midnight oil and works through vacations, because you don't want that feeling again. If they lost 10-7 to Clemson and come in there and, damn, that's not losing 45-0 or 45-3 to FSU. That's a completely different deal. And I think that if Miami loses games, they're going to go down with a fight.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, a winning season, oftentimes means positive player development as well. It allows you to put contributors in that you need to develop without putting them into necessarily pressure-packed situations. I mean, you can allow kids to develop at a high level while putting them in positions to succeed, instead of rushing them into, negative situations.
It's fun.
Winning seasons comes from everybody, and it comes from several contributors on the team. And a lot of times that just allows players to develop at a higher level as well. So, I think a winning season would also speak a lot potentially about the player development within the program as well.
Yeah, you make a great point, because how many times have you heard, DJ, over the last 6-7 years ago, Miami gets guys, but they don't elevate them. They don't take them. And that's the one thing that I said to Mario last year when he first got the job. And I was in his office, and he said to me, he says, "What do you think's been the big problem?" He says, "They get kids." I said, "Well, they just don't develop them." And he goes, "Well," and he looked at me and he says, "You know what? That's not going to happen here." So I like that, and so far he's proven everybody right, that wanted him here. And obviously everybody's going to, take shots at everybody. Everybody's going to be a Brent Venables and go off and say stupid things. But
yeah, we'll get to that idiot in a minute. But shout out to several people in the chat. Matthew Owen, thanks for the love there. Fish Fan Miami. Gary talking about grades on I think on Artavius Jones, but I don't think there's anything behind that. Larry, you got a fan here. Listening to Larry's like music to my ears.
Oh, Jeff Allen. ELO. Yeah. I love the ELO.
Yeah. He's got a question too. I want to bring up in a second, but shout out to Rasta.
What's up, Rasta? What's up, everybody?
We got Max in the chat as well. We got a full crew here.
Wow.
Thank you all for watching.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
We got. And then, so Jacoby Graz brings up a point about Matt Lee going to ACC Media Days with Mario. Kind of shows, his.
There's a whole lot
there. Yeah. Yep. And then, so this is Jeff's question. Actually, here's another question, real quick. Do we know who the full media day list is? That are going to the ACC days. We do not know that, so
I can look it up real quick.
How many did they take? 3? 41 new faces. Yeah, no, I thought it was like 27 as far as core kids.
Yeah, it might
They've
be.
They've added a lot more guys.
Might also be the if you count the coaches, goes up into the 40s maybe. So here's the question I wanted to ask kind of to both of you. So obviously all the stuff that went down Northwestern, that's now a Big Ten coaching vacancy. So I mean, I'll broaden this out a little bit because Jeff asks, is Hartline a candidate? If so, does that allow us to go back after Smith again? But I guess the larger question is
Smith and Ennis will go to Northwestern.
I also have the names of the ACC Media Day representatives.
All right, well, why don't you go ahead and read that out? Then I'll shoot another question.
The representatives are Tyler Van Dyke, Cam Kitchens, and Matt Lee. And like you guys said, if Matt Lee is a representative, that it probably means he's going to play a big factor on the line this year.
Shoot.
Yeah, you get those two, and Matt Lee kind of shows you how he's viewed by the coaching staff. But
absolutely.
All right, so my broader question is, so that's a pretty big head coaching domino to fall here in the summer. How much overall do you think something like that impacts? Obviously, Miami and Northwestern don't really go after necessarily one-for-one same kids, but that can have like a domino effect where, well, that causes this assistant to leave or that causes that assistant to leave. Do you think this will have any effect at all on Miami's recruiting or their ability to recruit, or is this kind of just a problem for DJ up there in Big Ten country?
Yeah. No, it's not a problem for me at all because thankfully Nebraska's in the West with Northwestern, so they should not be a problem this year. But anyway, I mean, I think
they weren't a problem last year either for anyone. If you looked at their record.
Well, actually, Nebraska was their only win last year.
Wait, that was the game they won. I knew Father Check.
It was a Frost onside kick. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. I could go on for hours about that. I don't really think so. I don't really think it's going to be a big problem for Miami. I mean, the other part of Northwestern is their academic standards, which are extremely difficult to meet as well. So I really don't think it's going to be a huge recruiting issue for Miami.
Yeah, well, Miami's in a conference that has quite a few Northwestern type of schools, and Duke and North Carolina are great schools, and Wake Forest, a great program, Georgia Tech. So there are a lot of academic schools in the ACC as well.
For sure. And
this isn't like the SEC. where you could pretty much mail in stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's a little bit stricter than the SEC, but I don't really think it's going to be a
Vanderbilt's the
problem
only school
for
that
Miami.
probably rattles anybody's academic chain in that whole conference.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Missouri.
Honestly, that's fair too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't really think this is going to affect Miami in terms of recruiting. I don't know if you have any other things to say about that, Blue, but I don't see it being a big issue.
No, but I mean, like I said, I mean, it is a Power 5 school, so you got to respect the fact that they're going to go after kids. I mean,
for sure.
I think it'll bother Notre Dame more than it will Miami.
Indiana too, I would assume.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying because Notre Dame tries to get those high academic kids as well.
Right.
So,
for sure.
So I think it'll bother them more so, than it will bother Miami. And I just think Miami's in a different groove now, recruiting wise.
For sure. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah. And Notre Dame also, like you said, recruits that part of the country. They get a lot of kids out of the Chicago area. Which is why grabbing Lightfoot was such a big going right into their backyard and grabbing someone. We're used to that happening to us. So as Blue said, things are changing here. I mean, pretty much any big time player out of Chicago, you expect, all right, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, it's going to be one of those three. So Miami going in there and taking someone out of there is a big deal.
And a good one too.
Yeah, one of the best in the country. Thanks, Pimp Down. Shout out to you, and then Jacoby doing some advertising for us. Just smash that like button. All right, as we kind of get towards wrapping up here. All right, Blue, you touched on this earlier. I'm just going to read Brent Venables' quote, and you can tell me what you think of it, but also like what, why? But anyway,
why? I think that's my first thing was why.
So they went 6-7 last year, so slightly better than Miami's 5-7. But Venables at the Big 12 media days says 6-7 isn't any good. But had we gotten blown out by Middle Tennessee State, had we gotten beaten by Florida State 45-3, the conversation is a little different. Now, he didn't say Miami, but I'm pretty sure.
I mean, the Middle Tennessee State tab is kind of clear.
They got blown out by Middle Tennessee State and lost to Florida State 45-3. I don't think there's another school that did that. So
yeah.
So I guess I'll start with you since you kind of sort of brought this up. But like, what's happening there?
In all fairness, I think that his program was left a lot better than Miami's was. Let's be fair. Miami had. And I'll say it, Miami's roster last year was as bad as they've ever had. And where Venables came in, at least his cupboard wasn't bare. He had guys, so I mean maybe his 6-7 was worse than Miami's 5-7 in a lot of ways. But why? Like you said, Vish.
I just don't
why?
Why
would you even say anything, especially when you're going to be going into a different conference in 2 years? I want to see the excuses that they lay out. Because it's no longer Iowa State and Kansas, that they're going to be playing. It's just like you look at UCF. I was looking at their schedule this year. Holy mackerel. There's an upgrade for you. Having a Baylor, Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma State. So, I just think that when you say things like that, you put yourself up, in a bad light. But,
and it doesn't really, like you said, they went 6-7. They lost to Texas 49-0. I don't know what.
Yeah, right.
Like it's like, yeah, I guess he's technically right. You didn't lose to Florida State 45-3. You lost to Texas 49-0. Like, I don't even understand. I don't know what Miami did to him to cause that. It was a bizarre.
He took a shot at Deion Sanders too in Colorado, so I guess he was on a rampage of sorts. I don't know what he aimed to do by taking shots at the Big 12 media days, but he better focus on his own program before he starts talking about others.
Yeah,
because clearly there's some work to do there.
All right, and I guess we'll end with this. Blue, I know you missed a little baseball discussion we had at the top of the show. Jeff was curious what your take is on Laz Gutierrez. The new third base coach is Fenster from Boston, from the Red Sox, and then also hired C.J. Anderson, who's this is the outfielders and first base coach. What are your overall thoughts on that? So that is the staff.
Yeah,
So
great
what are your
hires.
thoughts on how JD filled that out?
Yeah, great hires. I think that he got guys a lot like him. Hard workers, baseball people. I think definitely it helps them. Recruiting wise too. You walk into, and recruiting is getting so much tougher. And you guys looked at, I saw yesterday a stat where I think it was Colorado already signed 75% of their draft picks. Come on. See, so now recruiting is so tough now because you get a kid, like the kid Clark. I mean, Jesus, it didn't take long for Detroit just to, he was taking batting practice with them yesterday. So it's changed to the point where you got to get good recruiters. You got to get guys who have a good feel and good relationships. And especially because the kid, it's just going to be so much tougher to get the studs like LSU. And, I think those days are going to be coming to a crashing end. I mean, it's just the way it is. Was that my bell that I had to get off?
No, that unfortunately is my work. And that might be my bell actually. But yeah, no, I agree with you, Blue. And the recruiting, I think this is a good balanced staff. There's ties to South Florida, but there's also, like Fencer years in the majors. He'll bring that credibility with him.
Sure.
So I think JD did a good job of balancing continuity because he's the coach with bringing in some new faces, some fresh ideas. It'll definitely be weird to not have the manager coaching the bases because it's gonna be JD in the dugout because he's not a base running coach. So so things are changing there, and then obviously like you mentioned, players signing. I think pretty much if not all of the Hurricanes players that were picked were signed, but some of the recruits, the commits still haven't. So, fingers crossed some of them might end up on campus. We're still waiting to hear on a couple of them that were drafted that have not officially signed. But we'll have more on that next week when we get our man Jazz back, hopefully, at some point. I think that's about it. DJ, Blue, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Blue.
Yeah, great
Me
show,
too.
everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
everybody
Jeff.
who watched.
Yeah, we'll be back next week to see who decided to join this adventure and help bring the Hurricanes back. So be back next week. We should, I'm assuming, be at the normal time, 8:30 on Mondays. Until then, Blue, DJ, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next week.
The 6 Ring Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Ring Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show.